A smarter AI model is not going to solve your real estate business. The newest and fanciest and most expensive and fastest and flagship model is not just going to automatically solve your business problems if you just plug it into an agentic system and say, fix it. It doesn't work like that. Will it maybe eventually be able to help you? Yes, the models are getting to the point where if you give them a goal, they can eventually get there. But instead of that, if you understand some fundamentals of how to make useful and effective AI agents, then some of these basics we're going to go over today are going to help you without just throwing money at the flagship model and still getting terrible outputs. Just by harnessing the model, changing how you form the body around the brain being the model, is going to 10x your output, up to 10x your output as far as effectiveness, because it's going to have everything it needs to do what it needs to. So today, we're going to jump into that. Let me tell you what most realtors think. They think, you know what? I'm going to tell it, write my listing and create my marketing copy and send a couple messages to my client about it. And it's like, okay, you told it what to do, but it has nothing else. It's pretty smart, so it's going to give you something pretty good, right? And it's going to say, it's going to probably give you some AI slop copy, and it's going to sound robotic, and it's going to be generic, and it's probably going to be wrong in some way, shape, or form because it doesn't have what it needs. So what we need to do is switch from just assuming that the brain is supposed to do all of the work and actually take some ownership of, how do I actually make sure this agent is going to do better for me? So there's some fundamentals when it comes to agents. When we want to build the body around the agent, there's some specific things we can give it to make sure it's not only just going to be a smart thing that replies, but that can think ahead, think proactively, and even fill in the gaps where you are not. Because the last thing you want is to have to babysit your employee. So this general knowledge here about agents is hopefully going to give you a jump start. So the way we start is we have to give this AI agent a goal. Because if it doesn't know the point in which it wants to arrive to, it's just going to go everywhere, right? You can't close your eyes and throw a dart at a random wall hoping that it hits a target. These brains are incredibly smart, but you have to target them. And if you can't target them, it's a different question in your business of, do you even understand what your goals are and what effective work means? That's maybe a different conversation, different video. But you want to give this AI agent goals, or a goal, depending on which agent it is. In plain English, you don't need to know how to code. You don't need to know any fancy language. You can just hit the dictation button and start brain dumping, saying, this is what I need to accomplish. This is what a success metric looks like if you are going to do these things. Giving it a goal will target the brain. The next piece is going to be skills. So it'll have the place it's supposed to arrive, but it doesn't know what it needs skill-wise to get there. And you don't have to know how to type in manually these skills. What you do is train it. Just like you would train an employee, you say, hey, here's how I enter listings. This is my voice when it comes to these listings. This is my playbook when it comes to how I reply to clients and how I do transactions. These are skills that once you teach it, you say, this is how I do the thing. It will remember, for later, we'll talk about memory. It'll save that into basically a file so that it can recall it on command. The next piece is tools. So it knows where it's going, and it even knows how to get there, but it doesn't have the stuff to do it. It's got no hands. So what we need to do is give it hands. And all this really means is we need to give it access to the places that your things live. So whether it's Google Sheets, whether it's MLS, whether it's your CRM, whether it's your email, whatever the places you touch on a computer, you have to give this thing access to so that it can know, okay, this is where I'm going, this is the way I need to do it, and I have these things at my disposal to get there. Already an incredible start, and you're already significantly improving the output that you're going to get from your agent. The next piece, and I would say probably the second to most important piece, is context. You have to let it know what has happened so far, and you have to give it the information. When we as human beings are making decisions, we are making them based on previous decisions that we have gained context from so that we can know how to move forward. And AI employees, agents are the same exact way. You have to give it the context of your listings and your clients and your transactions and your specific market and all of the things regarding you and your business you need to feed it to. Now, what I hear all the time is, Adam, I don't know if I want to give all that information. What if somebody steals it? I promise these AI companies don't care and are not trying to steal your clients. They have plenty of money. They don't care about that information. And AI agents don't just automatically leak information by accident. The only way an agent does something is if you tell it to do something. So if you say, hey, go check my email and go send this message to my client, it's not going to be like, oh, here's all the information from my private emails to these customers. It doesn't work like that. It only does what it's told. It's not sentient. It is a directional tool. So giving it as much context as possible, even some personal context, financial context. Obviously, just don't go handing it your debit card, but giving it context for your business situation is going to help it be most effective. So we have where it's going, what it needs to get there, skills and tools, and where we've been. And the most important part about an agent and the brain, the body, the making sure you have the right employee is memory. If you tell it once, you don't want to have to tell it again. You want it to be able to recall all of these things on command, and when changes are made, saved. Memory. It is the most important part of your agent because over time, if you have the right body, the memory is going to make it so it only gets better. I've seen this firsthand as I have trained my employees. When you give them the goal, you give them the skills, you give them the tools, you give them the context, and they have memory, they become unstoppable. Because unlike people, agents, once you tell them to do something a certain way, they don't forget because they save it where they can recall it. Human beings, we are quite finite when it comes to memory, and so oftentimes we forget processes, things like that. AI employees don't do that. Do they forget small, like tiny nuances? Like if you told it you had spaghetti last week, it's probably not going to save that unless you explicitly tell it to save that. But important information, these call them bodies, the harnesses, are very good at remembering necessary and essential information, especially when you show what is essential and what is necessary. This is how you build an effective AI employee. And even if you used the cheapest and the free model, if you gave it these, the difference between the input with and without it would be so significant, it will blow your mind. And especially if you do use a higher, better flagship model, you will be even more impressed when you give it these things. That is when you start building true employees that can do things. You start putting them on schedule. You start having them monitor certain things that are on the computer and in the systems. It becomes an extremely effective way for you as a realtor to start getting some of your time back, because computer stuff is not what we want to do. The point of being a realtor is helping people. Does it require computer work? Yes. But the most effective time usage of your time as a realtor is interfacing with your clients. Your people are the reason you are in this. Our job is to care for them, and we cannot care for them best behind a screen. And so when you create an employee, this trust building exercise of creating these goals, skills, tools, context, memory, when you give it all those things and it's a smart model on top of that, this is an employee that you can trust with important pieces of your business because it doesn't forget. And once you tell it how to do it once, it will do it over and over again. So hopefully this video was useful. If something was confusing or if you wanted me to dive into one of these things specifically and how I set it up, just let me know. I would love to share that with you guys. But either way, let me know in the comments how it went, and I'll see you guys soon.